Welcome, my friends. If you follow this channel, you already know that layoffs are basically in full-on mode in technology companies. In fact, there has been so much layoff news that I have had difficulty finding time to cover anything else. You have heard about the 50% layoff at Twitter, the 11,000-person layoff at Meta, and the 10,000-person layoff at Amazon, and many others. But I know that you are all waiting to hear how many people Google will lay off. So far, all we have heard about is stealth layoffs at Google. But do big, cash-rich tech companies really need to cut so many employees? Some Wall Street analysts think so. But why are some big tech companies making such big announcements over a couple of hundred job cuts? Maybe it is not really about cost-cutting. Some observers think that big tech companies are capturing the moment to reset company culture. Just look at what is happening at Twitter. When Elon Musk took over, Twitter changed from a cushy country club to a place of 12-hour days working at high intensity. Is this the future of tech companies? Or will we go back to the old way once economic times improve? For now, nobody really knows. Everyone has their own vision of the future. What does it mean for technology companies? What does it mean for Silicon Valley? What does it mean for the economy? And what does it mean for the future of the United States? But before we get into all of that, please press the like button and leave us a comment below. We would love to hear from you. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you are notified of upcoming videos when they are released. If you follow this channel, you know that a wave of layoffs is crashing across Silicon Valley. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg very publicly laid off 11,000 employees last week. That amounts to 13% of Facebook employees. Amazon has confirmed plans to lay off 10,000 corporate and tech jobs. Many notable tech companies are conducting layoffs. Lyft, Robinhood, Stripe, Netflix, Coinbase, Intel. They are all downsizing. And they are not just cutting jobs. They are also cutting many of the perks that have become synonymous with tech jobs. Each of these companies have their own, unique approaches to implementing cost-cutting measures. Certainly, there are macroeconomic reasons for the contractions. First, big tech companies were big winners during the pandemic. During the pandemic, people were stuck at home. They had on Zoom meetings every day. They rode their Peloton exercise bikes. They watched Netflix. And, as a result, the fortunes and stock prices of these big tech companies went up sharply. Big tech companies received huge infusions of cash and used it to hire and expand. Sometimes, this was associated with extreme risk and overhiring. How times and macroeconomic conditions have changed. Inflation is raging in most countries of the world. Pandemic restrictions are easing. Wall Street investors are looking for safer bets for tougher macroeconomic conditions. So big tech companies are coming back to earth, to say the least. And that means cost-cutting and belt-tightening. The other macro reason for cost-cutting that nobody seems to talk about is the biggest tech companies are now mature. Big tech companies can no longer provide investors the same kind of massive growth they could in the boom times. The days of valuation based on the promise of high growth are over. And we are on the brink of financialization of big tech. That means financial discipline, share buybacks, and, eventually, dividends. Did you hear that, Google? Did you hear that, Meta? And that shift has all kinds of ramifications for players in the tech industry. Way back when, there was a time when Google said, "We're making so much money that we can afford to do this." Google set out to hire all the best talent. Not only were these people paid a lot, but they also received outrageous perks. Free food from multiple cafeterias, elaborate gyms, shuttle buses to take them from one campus to another. But this past spring Facebook and Google said, "We're going to tap the brakes on this stuff." Facebook, for example, said, "You can still have free food if you stay here and work late into the evening, but we're not going to give it to you quite so early." That means that employees need to work longer hours and later in the day. They also said, "We're going to give you smaller to-go boxes so you can't take the steak we're giving you and go feed your family with it." In other words, Facebook was saying, "We don't want you to think of Facebook that way anymore." Big tech jobs are moving closer to what normal working conditions are for most US employees. That shift comes as something of a shock. Some of the people working in big tech companies have only ever experienced boom times. The last real deflation in tech dates all the way back to the dot-com bust of 2001. People working in tech now cannot even remember that. People working in tech only known things going up and to the right. And that the jobs pay a lot. Then there were companies that wanted to hire you away from the company you were at. So, you got paid even more. Tech employees could leave Facebook or Google and go work for a startup. And if that startup didn't work, it might be purchased by Facebook or Google. Well, all of that came to a screeching halt this year. People say, oh, I can't just walk out. I can't just leave Facebook or Google and go to a crypto or Web3 startup and make even more money. Now, these employees actually have to do the job that I have right now and be content with that. And that amounts to culture shock. For 2 decades, Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Apple all had unreal and crazy growth. These big tech companies were selling tons of ads. Apple and Google were selling truckloads of iPhones. The way the world used technology changed fundamentally. Big tech led the charge and was handsomely rewarded for it. But the growth has been reduced to pedestrian levels. Many tech companies are pretty old now, or their main product is pretty old. Don't look now, but the iPhone is 15 years old. Google's main search ad technology and business is 20 years old. YouTube is now 15 years old. Big tech companies are still very big and very profitable. But the stunning growth is gone. Sentiment of Wall Street has changed. The growth of the past 2 decades is hard to find that in big tech these days. Time was when big tech companies were disruptors. Now, they are the establishment. And that does not sit well with Wall Street. And are the big tech companies being honest with investors? Yes, in the sense that they have to report their numbers publicly. But if they say, look, we're essentially going to stop growing, period. Or, we're only going to grow a little bit for a long time, that's game over. Wall Street doesn't want to hear that. Wall Street will say, that's fine. But you're now worth 70% less than what you used to be because we want to get that growth somewhere. Instead, big tech companies saying, all right, things are slowing now, but trust us, X number of years from now, this magic bean is going to sprout, and we're going to have a new VR headset. We're going to have a new metaverse, said Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg. We're going to grow in markets that don't exist yet. Trust us, we're going to get there, said Zuckerberg. Yeah, it turns out maybe streaming isn't quite as big as we thought it was, but we're also in gaming. That sounds good, right? Said Netflix. Many of the people who started these companies and created the high-growth businesses are not there anymore. Steve Jobs is dead. Many big tech company founders brought in professional managers. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos bought the Washington Post. Bill Gates decided to try to vaccinate the world. But, despite all of that, big tech companies are still the big dogs of American business and Wall Street. I think it's going to be harder for them to get the best and brightest, the most ambitious people, because those people will look around and say, what is happening now is actually part of Silicon Valley culture. It is a place of creative destruction where old things get taken down. New and interesting things get built in their place. It is part of the legendary history of Silicon Valley that has a great deal of truth to it as well. Actually, the real lesson in this is that it is time for Silicon Valley to come up with the next big thing. As you know, Wall Street seems to be driving the change in this phase of big tech. TCI wants Google to increase its share buybacks. The TCI letter drew specific attention to self-driving division Waymo. TCI says that Waymo has failed to justify its excessive investment. Google CEO Sundar Pichai has set a goal for Google to become 20% more efficient. Reading between the lines, this means headcount reductions. After years of unbridled headcount and salary growth, Google is facing economic challenges like never before. But, what do you think? Please leave us a comment below and hit the like button. We would love to hear from you. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you are notified of upcoming videos when they are released. Please share this video on social media. Thank you for watching.